Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about heredity. So we've talked so far about DNA and chromosomes and how they have genes on them that give you different traits. And then our last lesson was on meiosis, so how a cell actually will divide to create sperm and eggs, each having one copy of every chromosome. So today what we're going to look at is what happens when those sperm and eggs combine. So how do we know what those chromosomes are going to give us in terms of different traits? And how can we predict what an offspring will have based on its parents' genes? So we're going to be looking at an example today of immunity to poison ivy, but we can apply the same principles to a lot of different things, like eye color, and your probability for having different diseases. Um, we can use this to look at hair color in grizzly bears and flowers. So there's all kinds of stuff that this applies to, that you'll be looking at through some assignments, and if you go further in biology as well. So by now we know that you have got two copies of every chromosome, and one of those came from an egg and one came from a sperm. And on those chromosomes, there are different genes. So you've got the same genes, but sometimes different versions of them that we call alleles. So we're going to use the example of a gene for immunity to poison ivy. So that's going to be here. All right, so you have a gene, and it determines whether or not you are immune to poison ivy. So if you're somebody who is immune to poison ivy, you can interact with this plant and get it on your skin, and nothing's going to happen. If you are a person who is not immune to poison ivy, when you touch this plant, you are going to get a pretty nasty rash that can be quite painful. So there are two different alleles for this gene. One of those alleles we're going to represent with a capital I, and it is for immunity. The other allele, so the other version of this gene, does not give you immunity, and we'll represent that with a lowercase I. Okay, so you're not just going to have one copy of this, right? You're going to have two copies. So you can have a variety of combinations of these alleles, and that's going to be what we call your genotype. Okay, so if you inherit an immunity allele from both the egg and the sperm, you will have the genotype of two capital I's, two immunity alleles. And that's going to result in something we call a phenotype. So phenotype is just the physical appearance that results from your genotype. So in this case, your phenotype will be immunity to poison ivy. Now, if you inherit a copy of the lowercase I, the no immunity allele from both parents, your genotype will be two lowercase i's and you will have no immunity. All right, now the third possibility is you get one capital I, one immunity gene, and one lowercase I, one no immunity gene, and you have this.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
Hi, it's okay.
I'll come back.
I can, okay. Okay, the custodian came in, but let's keep going. All right, so if you have a capital I and a lowercase I, here's the thing. The reason that we represented these with different, with uppercase and lowercase is because one is dominant over the other. So we call the capital letter here, the immunity one, dominant because it masks or hides the other allele. So the lowercase I is recessive. So we've got a dominant gene, or sorry, a dominant allele and a recessive allele. So you actually only need one copy of the dominant allele in order to have immunity. So this person is going to still have immunity. Okay. So now what we're going to do is look at what can actually happen if a person who has one genotype has offspring with a person who has another genotype, and we can actually predict the probability of their offspring's genotypes and phenotypes. Very exciting. Just before we do that, I'm just going to throw in one more piece of terminology. Which is, so this isn't always going to be like, this is for immunity and no immunity, right? Sometimes we might be looking at different things like hair color or flower color or something. So the terminology we use for two dominant alleles, when you've got two copies of the dominant allele, is homozygous dominant. So homozygous dominant is you've got two copies of the dominant gene. Homo is same, and then dominant for the dominant gene. If you've got two copies of the recessive gene, it's still homozygous. But now instead of dominant, it is recessive. Because it's the recessive allele. If you have got one of each, you are heterozygous. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave that terminology there. Okay, so what we're gonna do to start is see what would happen if we had a person who was homozygous dominant and they had a partner who was homozygous recessive and they had a baby. So I'm gonna have this person make a baby with this person. And we'll see what their offspring look like. Okay, so let's make this person the female, this person the male. So we are gonna have, this person's gonna make eggs, and the possibilities for their eggs are either this allele or this allele. So all of their eggs will carry a dominant allele. So those are their eggs. This person is going to make sperm, and the possibility for their little sperm is this lowercase I, the recessive allele. So all of their sperm are going to carry a recessive allele. Okay, so we're going to do something called a Punnett square. So Punnett squares are how we actually predict the probability of offspring having different traits. You guys are actually going to do an assignment where you make an imaginary baby with a friend, or you can choose a celebrity or something. And you're going to be doing Punnett squares for a variety of traits and then seeing what your potential baby would look like. So Punnett squares, you make a little grid like this. And then we're going to put the possible eggs on this side. So you're going to have capital I egg, another capital I egg, and then we're going to put the sperm on this side. So lowercase I, Not the best drawing. Okay, and we're just gonna see what happens when we combine those. Okay, so if these two combine, so if this egg combines with this sperm, what we are gonna see is an offspring with one dominant allele and one recessive allele. If this egg combines with this sperm, same. If this egg combines with that sperm, same thing. And if this egg combines with this sperm, again, same thing. So now we can actually see what the probability of the offspring having different genotypes looks like. So, genotype. We have got 100% heterozygous. And phenotype. We've got 100% are immune to poison ivy. So if you have got a person who is homozygous dominant and they have offspring with anybody, they are going to produce offspring that are immune to poison ivy because they have to pass on a copy of that dominant allele. And as long as you've got one copy of that dominant allele, you have got immunity to poison ivy. So all of their offspring, even though this person has no immunity to poison ivy, their offspring with this person do. Now, this allele, though, all of the offspring are carriers of that recessive allele. So let's see what happens if we combine two heterozygous people together. Okay. So here's two people. They are both immune to poison ivy. They're going to make some babies. So again, we're going to put our eggs on this side. So let's make this person our egg person and this person our sperm person. So we've got the possible eggs. They can carry a dominant allele or a recessive allele. So dominant or recessive. And then we'll put our sperm on the top here. So you can also, with the sperm, you're either going to get a dominant allele or a recessive allele. So dominant or recessive. All right. So if this egg combines with that sperm, we get two capitalized. If this egg combines with this sperm, we get a capital I and a lowercase I. So just write the capital one first if you have that. If you have this egg combined with this sperm, capital and lowercase, so dominant and recessive. And if this egg combines with this sperm, we have got two lowercase i's. Okay, so let's do the genotype and phenotype breakdown for these people's offspring. So genotype, we have got 25%, so 1 out of 4 is homozygous dominant. We have got 1 out of 4 is homozygous recessive, so that's 25%. And then 2 out of 4, so 50% are heterozygous. Okay. And then for phenotype, just be careful. Don't carry these numbers straight over because let's have a look at this. These people are immune to poison ivy, right? These people are not immune. These people are. So we just need to make sure we're combining this 50% and this 25%. So 75% immune and 25% not immune. Okay. So just because you have got a trait and your partner has a trait does not mean that your offspring are going to have that same trait. So in this case, these people have a 25% chance of their offspring not being immune to poison ivy, even though they both are. So you can carry these recessive alleles um, for generations, and people can not even know that they have them. So that can be a problem sometimes when this is like for a disease, and two people don't have that disease, but they're both carriers of it, and it's a recessive allele. This does not mean that one out of every four babies that these people have are going to be not immune to poison ivy. What it means is there's a 25% chance that any one offspring will not be immune to poison ivy. Um, so males produce millions of sperm. People have hundreds of eggs that they're going to ovulate. So it's not that one out of every four kids you have is going to have this. It's that you have a 25% chance of your offspring having this, and a 75% chance of them not. So it's just kind of an interesting thing where we can look at the genotypes, and figure out what potential things are going to happen with your offspring. And yeah, the assignment that you guys are going to do for this is to choose a person. You can choose somebody in the class, or somebody from a different class, or a celebrity. And you're going to look at a variety of different traits that we know have dominant and recessive alleles, and make pretend babies with them, and then draw them. There have been some hilarious drawings that have come out of this project over the last few years. I don't have any examples handy, but yeah, get creative. It's a really fun time. If you are struggling with the Punnett squares, make sure you ask about them, because this is going to be pretty important moving forward. And we want to make sure you guys have a firm grasp on this. So ask me, ask Miss Steele. There's also a YouTube video that you guys can definitely watch, and there's some notes that are posted in the Google Classroom. So have fun, and we will see you next week.